Today we are going to discuss about time series analysis. And this is the second video in this topic. And if you have not seen the prior video, then I would request you to check that out. And I'm going to use Jupyter Notebook as my IDE and feel free to use any IDE of your choice. And as you know, since we are going to use pandas, let's import pandas as PD. And we are going to start learning about transformation of date format. So here is a code snippet which I have, and if you look at this code snippet, I have dates in various format in a sample array. I have dates in slash format, I have dates with hyphen, I have dates with just number, I have dates with time, and the time also in different format, like I have 9 a.m., 9:05, and I have various format, various combination, and I also have a invalid date which is not a date at all, and I have a date with a wrong time 25 hours, which is not valid as well. So now let's see how Python is going to behave in this circumstances where some dates are valid and some dates are not valid, and some dates are in different format, and let's see what's going to happen. So when I execute this, it pulls information like that. So here I have said day first is false and year first is false. That means the month is going to be the first. And that being said, we are going to follow the US format, which is MMDDYYYY. So we have a sample date in an array. I pass that as a parameter to toDateTime method in Panda, and that takes that array as a input, and it has these arguments, and the argument is day first is false, year first is false, and based on this it assumes US format. And if you see here, first one is February 1st, and which pulls in the timestamp format and says February 1st. Perfect. Same thing here. I have August 7th, August 7th. And here once again, it's pulling August 7th because the month is the first, and it does that. And here, because I have 25, which is not a valid time, it says not a timestamp. And here, this is not a date time at all, so it says not a time here. So by using these combination of argument, I am able to specify the system what is the format of my date. Now instead of saying day first as false, let us say day first as true. So when I say day first is true, that means I am following European format where DDMMYYYY. That being said, so 02 is going to be my date, and it switches to date. Awesome. And if you see here, 8 is my day and it switches to July 8th instead. Okay. And same thing. And the good thing about this is the system is smart to understand which date we are using, and it accordingly it switches it, and it works perfect for us. Now, what we'll do is we will set this to false and this to true, right? So if we do this, what's going to happen next is, if you notice here, it smartly picks year first. So our year is going to be 1903, which is perfect. Because it's a 4 digit, it picks up the year, and then it picks the other one. Here, since 08, it's all a two digit, it picks 08 as the year and remaining it picks it. So it's going against the timestamp format itself, the order itself, and it picks the remaining data accordingly. So what is this parameter which we haven't discussed? In terms of error, I can say ignore it as well, or I can say rise it. If I say ignore, if there is a error, it is going to ignore it. So if I say that there is error, then it's going to ignore that information. Okay, so this is pretty neat that it displays with information by ignoring information, or you're going to raise the error, or we have conditionally we can do it as well. Now there are times the date come in different format. Let's say we have a CSV file, and a CSV file date comes in with a comma separated like this, 1 comma 2 comma 3. In that case, I can specify on the system that these are formatted in this format, where month, day and year, and they are comma separated. If I say that, then automatically it reads it accordingly, and it reads the file as month is this, year is this, and it picks it and understands that. So our month is going to be 1, and our day is going to be 2, and the year is going to be 3. So it adds 2003. The system is smart to convert the 2-digit year to a 4-digit year as well. Now we have a epoch time. So what is a epoch time? Epoch time is a time unit measured in terms of nanoseconds or seconds relative to the birth of Unix. So Unix was born around 1970, and from that time in nanoseconds, how many seconds have elapsed, and they measure everything with respect to that. So if I execute this, if you notice, so here what I am doing is I am saying epoch time 1.5 multiplied by 365, 24, 60 and 60. There are so many seconds available in 1.5 year, and starting from 1970 January 1st, if I execute the command, then we go till July 2nd. So if I make this 1.0 and execute it, then exactly it goes 1 year from that. Right? So I'm able to switch and measure things in terms of seconds, and I'm able to measure time in a nanoseconds or seconds. So if I want nanosecond, I just remove this argument and I do it, then it will give information in nanoseconds. Okay. So basically, since but I want to keep it as seconds, the reason I want to keep it that way is because we are feeding information in seconds. So better to tell the system that we are feeding information in seconds. So we want to create timestamp accordingly. So here I have a print statement, and the print statement prints my timestamp, what is its type, and it also says what is its value. Okay, so that way we are able to see the data inside it. The type is timestamp and the data inside is this. Okay, so let's execute this command, and since I changed to nanosecond, it messed it up, but now I changed it back to seconds, so it's perfect now. Now once we have information in timestamp, let's say I want to convert back to epoch time. So how can I do that? So if you see here, I have a array where I have three different epoch time here. Okay, so 365 times 24 times 60 times 60. So this is 1 year. This is 2 year because I have 2 in front of it. And this is 3. and I have my unit of measure as seconds, and I am feeding this array. This is a array. The prior one was a number itself, and I feed this array to date time. And then what if you notice it creates for me a date time index, and I say when I execute this it is going to show me what is this epoch time value. Okay, so when you multiply that it gives me this and it gets me back epoch time. The reason why it does all this thing is by default when you convert this here from my index. So here I have my date time index which has the value in basically in timestamp, and I feed that my timestamp and I say convert it back to integer 64. It converts it and gives me in nanoseconds. So that's the reason it has maybe 9 zeros, right? So by this, we start with seconds or nanoseconds, we convert to time, and then we are able to convert back. So this is a reverse process where from time in seconds, we are able to convert to timestamp, then from timestamp back to in seconds, okay, or in fact nanoseconds. Okay, now let's move on and learn about periods. Okay, so we have learned about timestamp, but timestamp is a time at a particular instant. Okay, at one particular time, what is the value of time? So that is what we learned, various timestamps, epoch time, American time or European time, all those things. But now we are going to discuss about time series or time period. Time period is 1 year period, or it may be 6 month, or it may be even 1 day. So if you want to measure how much snow has fallen over a period of 1 week time, that's a period. That over a period of 1 week, how much snow has have we accumulated, right? So in that aspect, now we are going to discuss a period. So let's see this piece of code. Okay, so if you want to go and check pandas documentation, you can check pandas period and you would find a lot of useful information there. Now I can specify my time period as 2013, and pandas has a method called period, and I can pass 2013 as a parameter. In that case it produces a output which I am storing it in y 2013, and when I display that it says this one starts on January 1st and ends on December 31st. Perfect, right? So by this, I am able to specify the start and end of a period, and in this period, I can do some analysis. It may be as simple as measuring the snow accumulation, or let's say we received. I go to school and I have a couple of grades, and I want to take an average. I want to take an average for a period of a 1 year or something like that, right? Now we can do a quarterly measure as well. If you want to do a quarterly measure period, I can say 2011 Q3. So if I say like that, it's going to do third quarter of 2013, right? 2011. So which will start in July and it will end in September, right? We can, instead of saying by here I haven't specified my frequency, but here I am specifying it. It doesn't matter because by default it will take quarter ending December. Okay, but there are times you want to do some analysis where your quarter does not end in December, it ends in January or February. Okay, it may end any other time. In that case you can specify q jan or q feb or whatever is your business need. And if you do q feb, then it will system will adjust itself and it will show you correspondingly what the quarter is. So this is a fourth quarter ending January. So that means it will start the year before, and that we see here, it is starting on November 1st, right? And it will go till December 31st, right? So once again, it's a 3-month period. And now I can have a monthly period. So in a year I have 12 months period. So let's say we are doing some financial analysis, we want to calculate like how much was the company's dividend in a month. So we check that month and we see how much like in that month how many time they gave out dividend or any other business decision. Okay, so here I am saying 2010 month is February, and if I say that I have M2Y10 and this one starting is February 1st, ending is February 28th, right? So by this I am able to create a period for 1 month. Now we can go into a smaller period of a day as well. So here if you see I have a frequency of day, that means it's 1 day, and I chose the date as July 4th, and it starts on July 4th, ends on July 4th. Okay, and I have an hour here and March 6th, and it's a hour starting at 7, 8, 9. So the system is smart. Even if I give something in between, it takes the round time. It picks a time at 7:00 and goes till 7:59. Okay, so what does the system do is it picks the time which is in that range. So now, so far we have learned how to create a period. Now that we know how to create a period, we can do some math on it. Okay, so let's say we have a hour which is 1536, that is this variable. We can add 3000. That means I'm going to add 3000 hours to it. Or let us say we want to subtract 2 hours. We can do either one. So let's see what happens here. If I do this, I'm going to subtract 2 hours. So here we had 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. So here we have 5 a.m., right? So that way we are able to do simple math or simple arithmetic on periods as well. So this is throwing out a new period, same 1 hour, but instead of starting at 7, it is starting at 5. Let me add few more command lines. And now let's say I want to do some do some mathematics with day. I have a day period and I can add 365 to that. So if I add 365, then I'm going to have 2015 July 4th, because we started 2014. I add 365, exactly 1 year, and once again my period is day, and that's my date. So now let's move forward and do some math with quarterly period. So here is my quarterly period, which we initially started with quarter 4 year 12. I add 2 to that, that goes to quarter 2 year 13, and here I am just printing it. And then after doing that I am making a difference of these two. So when I do the difference, of course I am going to get difference as 2 period, and the period is quarterly. So if you run this, so we can see the same information. So here we can see that my period start and end date, and the difference between these two period is 2 quarters, and the quarter is starting in January. This is nice because initially we defined it is January, which is Q2 13, Q2 13, this one Q4Y12, Q4Y12, which is January period, January quarter, and I add 2 to that. So that still, and when you do the difference, it still remembers that, and it tells the difference is 2 quarters with the starting month as 1. Okay, which is very neat. Okay, now there are times you start with one period and then you want to switch it to some other period. Yes, we can do that as well. So we have a as frequency method. So you can specify which period you want to start with, and I want to convert into monthly. And if you say that, then it says the new period name is this and the frequency is this. So this way we can convert from one frequency to other frequency as well using the as frequency method. Okay, so here we can say, and here there is a parameter how. So we can say start or end. Okay, so when I say start, it takes from the beginning of the period. When I say end, it takes from the end of the period. So if you see, there is a difference of 2 months, right? So this is a 3 month period in a quarter, fifth in between six, and then we have the seven. So this way we are able to take one frequency and convert into something else and specify you want to take the starting of the period or ending of the period and how you want to do that. Okay, so that was how we can play around with um, in periods and changing frequency. Let me add few more command lines here. Okay, now let's work little more on time series, and if you want you can check the documentation on pandas, and that would give you a lot of details on that. So now, so let's say we have uh, um, a start date and an end date, and I want to create a period range. Okay, in that case, how can we do it? So I know the start date and end date, and I know the frequency. So I know how many slices I need to make now, right? So if I execute a command like this, so if you notice, I start on January 1st, which is January, and I'm ending on 2018 January. Even if you have one day here, still it picks it up and it creates a period for us. So think of it like a weather, and you want to see a average or cumulative snowfall for every month. So there is a day there, so we will keep a separate bucket for that, and that shows up there. So now it shows that this is a period index, and of this is the frequency, and the data type is a monthly period, and it shows all these dates. Okay, so we can create a period range where range has a certain start date and end date, and you can specify the frequency, and this is pretty neat way to do that. Now, is it always needed to specify the start date and end date, or do we have some other choice? Yes, of course, we have many other ways to do, and that's one standard way. And the other way is we specify the start and the number of period. And once again, the method is same period range, and we specify the period range, we specify the start, and we specify the number of period. And if you execute this, you get something like this, and it starts in 2010 Q4. The reason is the period ends in quarterly January, so that means it would have started in prior month, the prior year, which is Q4. And that being said, and we specified here this is for 2010, so it goes ahead and says 2010 Q4 is the first period, and accordingly it goes ahead and does all the calculation for 10 periods. Okay, so this is also something very neat which I like it. Now let's move on and do some example. And what we are going to do now is we are going to read a file, a comma separated file. And as you know, in the previous session or previous video, I explained that we have a file mit.csv which has a date column, and I am setting the same thing as index. And when I execute this, it will store the information into the data frame, first data frame. And if I see the index of this data frame, how it looks, so here we have the index. It has all the year in 1932, and there are 365 days. Frequency is not specified. The reason is the file has just the dates, and the system doesn't recognize that these are daily data. Maybe it's a business day data, maybe it's in some other format. So the system doesn't want to make a wrong assumption unless we specify the format of the date. Now system doesn't know in reality whether this is MIT data, which is of course in like Eastern time zone, but the system doesn't recognize that. So we want to tell the system that this was done in Boston, which is Eastern time zone. So there are ways to specify the system the time. Okay, so long we have worked with time where we specify the time but we don't say the time zone. But now we are going to work across few different cities. So the time in New York may be 3 hours ahead of Los Angeles, and it may be several hours ahead of um, um, no, actually, time in New York is behind Japan, right? So Japan is ahead of US in terms of time. So those kind of analysis we want to do, and the good thing is Python does have all those details, and because it is been, we have this PYTC library which knows what the time zone for each of them is. So that is Python time zone PYTC. Okay, so now this is a Boston time. So what we have a method called time zone localize. That means I am telling the system that these are not Greenwich time or UTC time. Instead, these are um, uh, Eastern Standard Time. So we have this method tz localize, and this method on a particular data frame or a particular index can be applied only one time, because once you applied localize, it takes that as the local time. After that we cannot uh, do localize once again. You want to change it, there is some other method to convert it. Okay, let's go ahead and execute this. So when you execute this, if you notice, here we have date time index, and it is saying -5 because US is 5 hours or 4 hours behind GMT or UTC time based on daylight saving. Okay, so the system records the dates and the time based on the localize, and it says this is the time we are going to have for this index. Now that we have saved the time, and if you want to change the time, it's possible to change it. Okay, but we cannot use the localize one more time. Instead, we have to use time zone convert, and when you do convert, you can specify to which time zone you want to go to. And now I want to go with Los Angeles, And once I say Los Angeles, we know it is 3 hours behind US. So if US is -5, we are going to get -8 now. So here if you see, I get -8 as my time for Los Angeles. Okay. Instead, if I had started with localize straight away with Los Angeles, I would have got the same information. But so we can always go in 2 steps, not a problem. So here what I did was I created a new data frame and I stored in that. So this is the method to be used whenever you are creating a new data frame. You can do it this way. But sometime I want to use the same data frame, let's say data frame 3, and I want to update the index. In that case, what we can do is we can update the index itself. And if you want to update the index itself, you have one more method, and that would be index is equal to index tc convert. So here I am going to update my index. So if you notice this one, data frame 3, I am updating it with the time in Dubai, and Dubai is ahead of US and also UTC time. So that's the reason here you have +4, so it is 4 hours ahead of GMT time, right? So we have update, so we were able to change time few times, and also we were able to localize it, and that's the first time when we don't have any time details. When its time is not given, you can specify as localized. So if you notice, after I have set the time, here we see America, Los Angeles, US, Eastern, but here there is no time information on the index. So you want to always validate whether you have the time available before you do any other changes to that. In the past, I have worked in airlines industry where a flight takes off in New York, goes to San Francisco, and the time in origin is different from the time in takeoff. So, time in landing. In those scenarios, this is very helpful where we can calculate the time in the place where it started, what is the time, and in the while landing, what is the time at origin. Those kind of calculation, this time zone analysis is very useful for that. And moving on, so let's go to next one. So here we learned how to change time and all that stuff. Okay, so now let's say I know my start time, I know the number of periods, I know the frequency, and I can say my date range is equal to this, and I'm going to create a new date range index. So this will create a date range index, and once I know my date range index, I can go and set that to any data frame. So we have a data frame 1, and I'm going to set a new index to that. What is the reason I'm doing it? There are two reasons I'm doing that. Let's see that. So here I changed my date. Previously I had 1932. I changed to 2020 because I'm going to do some analysis. And also this one didn't have a frequency detail, and now I have a frequency detail attached to it. So I have a time zone, I have frequency, number of period is 366 exactly as before, and I started date as 2020 because I'm going to do some analysis for 2020. After my date range index is available, I set that to my data frame 1. So there is a method data frame 1 set index, and I pass that. I say in place equal to true because I'm updating the same data frame, and when I display, I have all other information as is except that the index value has been changed, right? So now we have new index, and after we have the index, let's say now I want to do some shift mechanism on this. I want to shift data. Okay, so there are times we are going to shift data up and down. So the best scenario is, let's say I want to shift my data by two positions. So my index remains the same, but my data has shifted by two columns. So once it shifted, I have NaN value, NaN, for those two cells, right? So I have shifted it. So there are times like you want to shift it and do some analysis. So let's say you want to find um, what is the cumulative precipitation to figure the value. So if you look here, the precipitation is 0, you have some precipitation, 0 again. So we're not able to make any meaning out of it. So in financial world, when you have this kind of circumstances, what we do is we calculate 5-day moving average, 10-day moving average. Then we get to know the average precipitation for a 5-day period, which is more meaningful. In a similar way, if you want to calculate a 5-day average precipitation, which are for 5 different days, what we can do is we can shift the data 5 times and then sum them up and divide by 5. That will give us average precipitation for 5 days. How do I do that? So that to do that, here is the best way we can do it. So if you see here, I am saying data frame 1 precipitation, data frame 1 precipitation shifted down by 1 position, then again do the same thing, shift down by 2, 3, 4. So in total I have 5 data. I sum them up, divide by 5. This will give me precipitation 5-day moving average. So now I have 5-day moving average, and I say show me the data frame. And if you notice, if you add this first 5 numbers here, it adds up to 1. You divide by 5, it gives you zero point 0.2. Neat. So this way I am able to calculate the average precipitation for 5-day period. But if you notice, this zero point 0.2 I should not say is average on this day, maybe in between all this we should say on 3rd. On January 3rd, average precipitation is zero point 0.2. So I want to shift it up. But each time I shift up or down, what is going to happen is I'm going to lose information. So sometime I want to shift the key or the date and sometime I want to shift the data. So now if I want to shift the time, okay, what can we do? So before we do that, since we are studying only this 5-day moving average, why don't we keep that on a separate data frame? I keep data frame 5-day moving average and I store that into that, and then I say what is my index, and I see all my index with day frequency. It's perfect the way I wanted, and it's getting all these values from the prior data frame. Okay, and now we have that. I want to shift it by 2 position now, right? But I don't want to shift the data, I want to shift the time. So the method for that is t shift, time shift, and I want to shift -2 position because relative to data, it's a reverse direction. And when I execute this, it's going to give me -2. Once again, I have 4 NaN, but the good thing is time got shifted. January 1st is down. But when we shift data, we show NaN 4 times. But when we shift time, we don't say NaN on the top because system knows what are the remaining 2 days. So system is able to guess that. So that's pretty neat that system goes and pulls the information or guesses the information if it can guess it. And if it's not able to guess, then it says NaN. So now we were able to get the information what we need. We were able to shift it, and we were able to do average, all those kind of stuff. So with this, I am done with time series analysis. And if you have any question, please feel free to leave them in the comment box. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And also please do click on the bell button for channel updates. So I will see you in one more video. Thank you.